Imagine this. Nations that have long stood by Israel are now saying, enough is enough. Why are the United Kingdom, France, and Canada threatening sanctions against Israel? What has changed? Let's delve into this significant shift in international relations. On May 19, 2025, the leaders of the United Kingdom, France, and Canada issued a joint statement warning Israel to halt its renewed military offensive in Gaza and to lift restrictions on humanitarian aid. They condemned Israel's blockade preventing food, medical, and fuel supplies from entering Gaza, labeling it potentially in violation of international humanitarian law. The leaders emphasized that, if these concerns are not addressed, the three countries are prepared to take further action, including imposing targeted sanctions on Israel. To truly understand the weight of this moment, we need to step back and look at the larger picture. Because what's happening now is not just about sanctions or politics, it's about a long-suffering people and a region caught in an endless loop of violence, occupation, and international double standards. For decades, the Palestinian people have lived under what human rights organizations have called an apartheid-like system. The Gaza Strip, a narrow coastal territory home to over 2 million people, has been described by many, including former British Prime Minister David Cameron, as the world's largest open-air prison. Israel's blockade of Gaza has been in place since 2007. It restricts the movement of people and goods in and out of the region. While Israel argues this is necessary to limit the threat posed by Hamas, the humanitarian consequences have been catastrophic. Chronic shortages of clean water, electricity, fuel, and medical supplies have created a humanitarian crisis that predates even the most recent conflict. And then came October 2023, a brutal turning point. Hamas launched a deadly cross-border attack into southern Israel, killing over 1,200 people and taking many hostage. Israel's response was swift and devastating, a full-scale military assault on Gaza. But unlike previous operations this time, the scale was unprecedented. Entire neighborhoods were leveled, refugee camps bombed, hospitals targeted, and the civilian death toll skyrocketed. By May 2025, the Gaza Health Ministry reported more than 53,000 Palestinians killed, with tens of thousands more injured or missing. Many of the victims were women and children. More than 70% of Gaza's population is now displaced. Families are living in makeshift tents, lacking basic sanitation, clean water, and food. And yet, until recently, the West, particularly the UK, France, and Canada, maintained a cautious, often muted response, focusing more on Israel's right to self-defense than on the plight of Palestinians. But now, something is shifting. Public pressure is growing. Across Europe and North America, mass protests have filled the streets, demanding an end to the war, an end to the occupation, and justice for Palestine. Social media has played a powerful role in showing the raw, unfiltered reality on the ground. Images of injured children, destroyed hospitals, and grieving families are impossible to ignore. This public outcry is starting to reshape political discourse. The recent joint statement by the UK, France, and Canada is the most forceful yet. It specifically condemns Israel's prevention of humanitarian aid deliveries, an act that may constitute a breach of international humanitarian law. These countries have now warned that, if Israel continues its offensive and maintains the blockade, targeted sanctions may be imposed. This is no small gesture. Remember, these three nations have historically voted against UN resolutions condemning Israel. They've sold weapons to Israel, engaged in intelligence sharing, and often defended Israeli actions on the global stage. For them to now talk about sanctions, that's a diplomatic earthquake. At the same time, pressure is mounting within Israel too. Critics argue that the prolonged military campaign is not achieving its stated goals, and instead is isolating Israel internationally. Some Israeli human rights groups have called the war collective punishment, a war not just against Hamas but against an entire population. And then there's the United States, Israel's most powerful ally. While Washington has yet to threaten sanctions, even the Biden administration has expressed concern over the humanitarian situation, pushing for humanitarian pauses, and now supporting alternative aid channels through international NGOs. But many Palestinians and activists argue that this isn't enough. They say what's needed is not just aid, but accountability, recognition, and ultimately, freedom. The call for Palestinian statehood is gaining traction again. The logic is simple yet powerful. If we want peace, we must end the occupation. And the growing frustration seen in London, Paris, and Ottawa is perhaps a sign that even longtime Israeli allies are beginning to understand that message. Let's be real for a second. When was the last time you heard countries like the UK, France, and Canada, who've always been seen as loyal friends of Israel, say something this bold? These aren't just countries sitting quietly on the sidelines anymore. They're now stepping into the spotlight and basically saying, Israel, if you don't stop, we will act. That's huge. For decades, the narrative has always leaned heavily in Israel's favor in many Western capitals. Any criticism of Israeli actions, no matter how justified, was often brushed aside as controversial or too politically sensitive. But now, something's changing, and you can feel it. Maybe it's the fact that people around the world, from students in New York to mothers in Paris to doctors in Toronto, are taking to the streets, waving Palestinian flags and chanting Free Palestine. Maybe it's the non-stop footage on social media. Children pulled from rubble, fathers crying over lifeless bodies, mothers giving birth in tents with no medical help. It's raw, it's painful, and for many, it's impossible to look away anymore. And now, finally, governments are starting to catch up to what their people already feel. What the UK, France, and Canada just did is not just about policy, it's about acknowledging that this situation in Gaza has crossed a moral red line. When you prevent food and medicine from reaching civilians, when hospitals are bombed and children die from dehydration and malnutrition, it's no longer a conflict. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. And you know what's even more important? These countries didn't just stop at words. They mentioned sanctions. That's a big deal, because sanctions are a tool usually reserved for serious violations of international law. And for countries like these to even bring it up means they see this as a serious violation. Now, whether they actually follow through, we'll see. Words are one thing, action is another, but the message has been sent, loud and clear. And here's the thing, it's not about choosing sides in a war, it's about choosing humanity. This isn't about religion or politics or ancient history, it's about children being able to sleep without the sound of bombs. It's about giving families the right to live with dignity. It's about ending a system that treats Palestinian lives as disposable. So now, we're at a turning point. Will these governments keep the pressure on? Will they finally say, enough with the double standards? Or will this just be another temporary statement that fades into silence, while the bombs keep falling? That's why your voice, yes, yours, matters. Every time you speak up, share a story, leave a comment, or question the status quo, you're part of this global wave demanding justice and freedom for the Palestinian people. Because Palestine is not just a hashtag, it's not just a trending topic. It's a living, breathing nation full of real people who've been waiting too long for peace, for justice, and for the world to finally say, you deserve to be free. The potential sanctions from the UK, France, and Canada represent a pivotal moment in international relations concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As global citizens, it's crucial to stay informed and engaged. The situation in Gaza is dire, and international pressure can play a role in prompting change. What are your thoughts on this development? Do you believe these sanctions will lead to meaningful change? Share your perspectives in the comments below. Let's foster a constructive dialogue on this critical issue.